from Alabama, Ms. Sewell, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During this CBC Special Order Hour, we're going to honor the life and legacy of Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. And I rise today to pay tribute to a great civil rights leader, Reverend Fred Lee Shuttlesworth, who passed away yesterday at the age of 89. Reverend Shuttlesworth was a passionate advocate for equal rights and a courageous freedom rider. He was one of the leaders of the civil rights movement in Birmingham, Alabama, and a co-founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. Martin Luther King considered Reverend Shuttlesworth the most courageous civil rights fighter in the South. Born in Mount Meg, Alabama, on March 18, 1922, Reverend Shuttlesworth was raised in Birmingham, Alabama. Up by his tough-minded mother, Mrs. Alberta Robinson Shuttlesworth Webb, Reverend Shuttlesworth developed a very powerful personality that prepared him for his civil rights leadership in Alabama. Reverend Shuttlesworth was a bright student and graduated valedictorian of his class at Rosedale High School in 1940. Shuttlesworth was compassionate. He was captivating, both as a student and then later as a minister. He captivated the Baptist denomination and felt called to the ministry. He graduated from Alabama State College, now known as Alabama State University, in 1952 and became the pastor of the historic First Presbyterian Church, First Baptist Church in Selma, Alabama. In 1953, Reverend Shuttlesworth took over as pastor of Bethel Baptist Church in North Birmingham, Alabama. Reverend Shuttlesworth soon became the most publicized crusader in the history of Birmingham, Alabama. He became active in the voter registration efforts of the NAACP and in the Civic League's attempts to clean up saloons. In 1955, Reverend Shuttlesworth supported the Montgomery bus boycott that was set in motion by Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat. When an Alabama Circuit Court injunction stopped the NAACP's operation in the state of Alabama, Reverend Shuttlesworth founded the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights in June of 1956. The weekly meetings of this wonderful organization became the mouthpiece for the mass movements of African Americans in Birmingham, Alabama for over a decade. And in 1957, Reverend Shuttlesworth helped fellow ministers and civil rights leaders, Martin Luther King and Ralph David Abernathy, to found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which became the most important civil rights organization in the South during the 1960s. Reverend Shuttlesworth was an inspiration to other activists because of his strong commitment to the fight for equality, which often put him and his family in harm's way. He was the target of 2 bombings. When Shuttlesworth and his wife attempted to enroll their children in a previously all-white Birmingham public school in 1957, a mob of Klansmen attacked him. Shuttlesworth was beaten with chains and brass knuckles in the streets while someone stabbed his wife during this altercation. His personal courage and sacrifice encouraged others to join the movement as well. Shuttlesworth participated in the sit-ins against segregated lunch counters in 1960 and took part in the organization and completion of the Freedom Riders in 1961. Reverend Shuttlesworth willingly stood up against the brutal tactics of Public Safety Commissioner Eugene Bull O'Connor, as he was known, in the fight for civil rights. The civil rights movement climaxed in 1963 when Shuttlesworth convinced Martin Luther King Jr. and the SCLC to come to Birmingham, Alabama for a massive campaign against segregation. In response to the campaign, Bull O'Connor released police dogs on activists and had activists sprayed with intense fire hose, streaming of water, so powerful that they were knocked down to their feet. These egregious actions were captured on national television and published in newspapers across this country. The national attention led to the federal intervention and the signing of the Civil Rights Bill of 1964, and then later the Voting Rights Act of 1965 by President Lyndon Baines Johnson. Reverend Shuttlesworth was the heart of this monumental victory as he poured his soul into the civil rights movement. Although Shuttlesworth remained active in the movement in Alabama and regularly visited, he did move in 1961 to Cincinnati, Ohio, where he was a pastor for most of the next 47 years. In Cincinnati, Shuttlesworth became the pastor of the Greater New Light Baptist Church in 1966 and continued his work to fight against racism and for the alleviation of the problems of the homelessness until he retired in 2007. Upon his retirement, Reverend Shuttlesworth moved back to Birmingham, Alabama. I know that the city of Birmingham is very proud of its native son and the role he played in the civil rights movement. In 1988, the Birmingham City Council approved an order to rename a 4-mile stretch of land the F.L. Shuttlesworth Drive. In addition, the city of Birmingham erected a statue of Reverend Shuttlesworth outside the Civil Rights Institute when it opened in 1992. The Birmingham, Alabama Airport Authority also renamed the airport. The Birmingham International Airport is now known as the Birmingham Shuttlesworth International Airport in his honor. On behalf of a grateful nation, Reverend Shuttlesworth was presented with the Presidential Citizens Medal by President Bill Clinton on January 8, 2001. Mr. Shuttlesworth was married to Sapphira Bailey Shuttlesworth, and he was a proud father of 4, Patricia, Ruby, Fred Jr., and Caroline. He also leaves behind 11 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren. Now, over the years, Reverend Shuttlesworth has distinguished himself and been honored by numerous awards. His leadership that he showed this nation in fighting against racism is second to none. The people of the 7th Congressional District of Alabama that I am so grateful to represent commends him for his wonderful efforts. And as the first Black Congresswoman elected from the state of Alabama, I know I stand on the shoulders of Reverend Shuttlesworth. I would not be here today had it not been for his sacrifice and the sacrifice of so many. His commitment to the racial equality and justice for all is a message that has inspired people for generations to come. I, therefore, representative to this U.S. Congress from the 7th Congressional District of Alabama, do hereby recognize Reverend Fred Lee Shuttlesworth for his numerous contributions, not only to the 7th Congressional District and the state of Alabama, but to our wonderful nation. I ask those present today to join me in honoring Reverend Shuttlesworth and commending him for his many achievements on behalf of a grateful nation. I know that many of my colleagues will join me during this hour to commemorate his life and legacy. And now I yield minutes to our CB